Welcome to Pour Over Marketing. I'm Rob Southgate. So exciting. There's new things on StreamYard that I see today, but I'm not going to be able to play with them. They have a thing where you can do presentation type things and have demo scenes locked in. So look for that in the future. I'm really excited to try this stuff. So, okay, here we are. Every Saturday, 8 a.m. Central Time, Pour Over Marketing happens. We are going to be next weekend doing Pour Over on the road because we're not going to be here. We are going to be on Saturday, we are going to be in Omaha, Nebraska. So I think it's the first time we've broadcast from Omaha, which is exciting. So there will be a Pour Over Marketing on the road or road trip or whatever we called it last time. We're going to go with that same thing. No, last time we did international. This is national. So I guess it's Pour Over on the road. Pour Over road trip. That's a much better name. Takes a minute to get there. So I've got a few things I want to talk about today, and I'm hoping that we get some comments, we get some questions. I have an announcement I want to make. Let's get into it. So one obsession I've started this week. I'm at the very beginning of an obsession, so it's not an obsession yet, but I can tell it's going that direction. My class this week, one of my classes, I had to do a whole presentation on pitching and how to do a pitch and what a pitch is and what the elements of a pitch. And as I was doing it, I was realizing there is something in here that all of us can use. All of us that are entrepreneurs, all of us that are trying to market things. A pitch, what this is talking about, and I should actually backtrack a second. The obsession is in the presentation, there was a link that I found to a show called The Pitch that was on AMC. And it's by the producer of Undercover Boss, which is not a show that I love, not at all. And then one of the producers from Mad Men. So it's all about marketing in that. And what this show does is it'll take, I watched the first episode. It was about Subway. Subway wanted to have a new ad campaign. And what they did was they said, we want to focus on our new breakfast lineup. Okay, so you're not just pulling ideas out of thin air. They have something they want to do. This goes back to you and what you're promoting. You might want to try some of these tactics, okay? So they said, we want it to be breakfast. We want to promote our breakfast. What do you want to promote? You think about it. Do I want to promote my t-shirts that are in my store? Do I want to promote a special episode of something I'm doing? Do I want to promote that I'm going to be making an appearance or my book, okay? My book that's launching. It can't just be random, or it can be, I guess. Figure out what it is you want to promote. Then they bring in two agencies, one big city agency, one smaller agency, and they tell them we want to do it about Subway's new breakfast menu, and we're going to invite you back in to pitch your ideas. And the two teams are facing each other. So, I mean, this is high competition. Frankly, I thought there were really good things that were said in there, and there was also some stuff that I was like, wow, they are not really catching on to what this is. It felt very much like the creativity was forced, maybe. So anyway, doesn't matter. So what they did is they went from there. They now have their assignment. You have your assignment. You're going to promote your upcoming book. Not only do you create a strategy for what you're going to do, you say, these are all the things I want to, where I want to place it, how I want to do it, when I want to place it. But then they said, okay, here's the premise. We need basically a story. We need whatever the campaign is. And I think this is where a lot of us get lost. We don't really create a campaign for anything. Okay. What we do is we say, I want to promote, I have a new book coming out. So I'm going to create X amount of Instagram posts, X amount of Facebook posts, and I'm going to put on there new book coming out. Well, what if you broke that? What if you treated it like you were an ad agency? Maybe you have a friend who's really creative that you could sit down with and you say, okay, let's pitch ideas. For the Subway one, what they did was they started breaking it down. They did a brainstorming session, and this is where I think you could benefit because we're on that fast track. We're always like, how do I get from A to B? And here's a strategy, here's a calendar, but maybe adding that creative element that goes a step further, brainstorming and figuring out what is it. They said very much. They went, it's breakfast. We want to promote that, and we specifically want the demographic 18 to 24. Aha. So if you think about demographics, and we talk about that a lot on here, Subway is going to have a wide demographic, right? When I ask the average person, oh, well, what's your demographic? The response is everybody. Subway could say everybody, grandparents, kids, everybody, rich people, poor people, just not sandwich haters. Although maybe they could. So they said our demographic we want to go for is 18 to 24, and we want to promote our breakfast sandwich. Now they brainstorm it. And this was the part that I was like, this is the part we need. Because you individually are not going to go in and pitch a bunch of ideas to yourself, right? I don't care about the pitch. Well, I kind of do. I'll get to that. What I care about is the brainstorming and figuring out what is it, who is it we're trying to attract, who is it we're talking to, and what is it we're trying to promote, and narrowing that down. This doesn't mean you can't have more than one thing out there. And this is where I think people get tripped up. I have a book coming out. I want it to be read by everybody. Well, yeah, but maybe you can create a campaign specific to women in a certain financial bracket that are 35 to 45. And now you can build something around that. Now you can take that and say, okay, well, what's the strategy for getting it out there? We always think wide net, but that's not really the most successful way. It takes more work because you're creating multiple things, but why not go women 35 to 45 in a $100,000 plus income bracket? I want to promote my book to them. What do I say to them? Number one, brainstorm what your campaign is going to be. But number two, where are they? Where is that audience? That's where it gets really important. Know where they are. Know the demographic you're going for. This is, like I said, where I think a lot of people get tripped up. They think it's got to be everybody or my audience is everybody. And when I ask you to narrow it down, it gets 10% narrower where it should be 90% narrower. Well, maybe if you went this approach and you said, I very specifically have something I'm promoting. Here's who I want to hit. What do I want to say to them? Now you can backtrack and go, now where are they? And use that campaign to promote to them specifically. So they do this. They come up with a half dozen ideas, each of the things, each of these firms. And some of them are good and some of them are bad. It's interesting to watch. But excuse me. I could tell my throat needed coffee lubrication. Uh, the show's called The Pitch, but it doesn't actually craft the pitch. All it does is show them doing the creative behind it, talking about some of the demographic stuff, showing what they're going to do, and then they go in and the guy does the pitch and you see him do it live. Oh, interesting. I mean, not live, but see him do it in front of the client. But it doesn't show how they craft the pitch. Now, this is where I also think the idea of the pitch is going to be important to you. We spent time, I don't know, 4 episodes ago, talking about your elevator pitch. Wasn't that the same thing? Your elevator pitch is your pitch for your company. It's your pitch for you, brand you. But your campaign should have a pitch. It doesn't have to take the word elevator out of it. It should be a way that you can explain exactly what you're doing concisely and who it's for. Now, who's this for? The biggest person it's for is you. If you can say it clearly and hone that thing down to 5, 6, 7 sentences that tell you who and what your campaign is about and how it's going to hit them, that means you have a very clear understanding of it. The clearer the understanding of it is to you, the easier it is for you to say, okay, now I know they're using Blue Sky. This target I'm using is Blue Sky. I'm going for teenagers. They're still using Snapchat, or they've moved on. They're on Instagram stories. They're not doing Instagram regular feed anymore. Now you know. The more concise you can make the pitch for your campaign, the better it is for you, the easier it is for you to figure out where you're going to do things and how you're going to deliver it. The other person the pitch is for is partners, places you want to share. So I'll give you an example. If I create a pitch for this show, because I am actively working on things to grow this show, and there's an announcement coming today. I have to hone a pitch for the show and for the value it adds to others. And in fact, your pitch should include value. They didn't show that on here, but it should. It should include what the value is, because value is the tipping point. You know, when they were doing their Subway thing, they were having fun with it, and it was funny or whatever. And you're like, okay. The client said, "Yeah, but I don't see how that pushes anybody to buy our food because it's not making our food look amazing." It's like, okay. So you need to hit that value point to the customer, but you also need to hit that value point to the consumer. So in your pitch, you want to present value as well. And if you can do that, now you can go, I can take this show and I can go to other Substacks that do marketing, and I can say, hey, I do this show and here's what it's about. It demonstrates a little bit of value to their audience as well. I say, do you want to come on and do a live Substack with me? Live video. Do you want to come be a guest on the show? It's that elevator pitch. Right now, what I'm promoting is Integrated Marketing Palooza 2025. I will be promoting that. Well, there's a specific thing. Who is it for? I have to narrow that down. Once again, it doesn't mean I can't go for more than one. I could say this is for entrepreneurs. And this is for entrepreneurs that are startups. And I can create a whole campaign for that. But then I can also say, you know what? This is also for marketing students. There's a lot of them. How do I reach them and what do I tell them? Hey, learn about integrated marketing through this fun podcast we're doing called Integrated Marketing Palooza. Right? You want to get your pitch so that it is concise, so that it makes sense. It adds value to the customer, which is the client, and it also adds value to the consumer. Now, the client might be you. That's fine. But make sure it's concise. If you're filling in the blanks, try it on somebody. Say it to them. See what they ask. See what they say. Take the ego out of it. Because here's what happens. You go into a pitch meeting. You've got two rival pitch things. Each of them comes in with two different pitches. Only one of the four is getting chosen. One team is completely out. The other team got one of the two. Well, there are people on their team that worked hard on the one that didn't get taken in, rejected. They have to be able to check their ego and go, no, but the campaign worked. That's what we were after. My words, yeah, I'll hold on to my words. Maybe I'll have another way to use them. Maybe there's another thing I can do with it. Maybe it just wasn't cooked enough, or maybe it was overcooked. But for this campaign, in this moment, the one that won is this. And I have to celebrate that and work everything I can with it to maybe figure out why it worked and how to go about it. Do we have any questions? You know what? Last week we had a really interesting thing happen. I kept saying nobody was watching, nobody was commenting. And then I went to uh, Facebook afterwards, and there were all these comments. So sorry if I didn't, guys. Yeah, I don't see any in Facebook. It was very strange. Okay. We'll deal. But yeah, if you have comments, questions, lay them in here. So that was my talk about the pitch. I wanted to kind of talk about that concept. We'll probably go back to it as we go on here. Uh, I think there's really something to that. I think there's something to the brainstorming section of the process and doing a specific campaign for things, making a pitch for what you're doing that makes sense, because it's going to just bring clarity to what you're doing. Right now, we're on a treadwheel. What we do is we or a treadmill, hamster wheel. What we do now is we go. I want to promote my artwork. I want to promote that I'm making an appearance at GalaxyCon or wherever, and we make a bunch of assets and then start throwing them out. Some people are more like, okay, strategy. How am I going to put them out? I'm going to put it here, 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 and here. Okay. But what about the campaign part of it? What if you developed a bit of a campaign around it? Okay. It was funny. I was listening to The Geeks, Geekz. My friend Lil and his guys, Steve and Sean, do this show. They've been doing it forever. And this year they introduced the Geekies, their award show. And with the Geekies, by the way, you should listen to it. It's a fun show, especially if you like toys and geek culture stuff. If you're of a certain age, 40s and up, it's really meant for that age, uh, because they talk a lot about 80s and 90s toys. A lot of their movie references are 80s, 90s kind of stuff. But it's good. It's fun. And oh man, I had a whole thought around the Geekies. I lost it. I'm so sorry, guys. Go watch The Geeks or go listen to it. Geekz. Uh, it's good. And listen to that show, and maybe I'll remember what it is as we go along here. What I wanted to point out about it, because there was something during it that I was like, oh yeah, I want to bring that up, and yeah, not enough coffee. There was a comment called "Too Much Coffee Man." Today, I'm not enough coffee man. It's going to be a rough one. Okay. So announcement. Let's go with the announcement. I've been talking about this with Maeve, my wife. We love this show. We love what's going on here. And I've kind of treated it as my fun side project. Every once in a while, I'll talk about how I want to grow it and all that, but I'm not really putting the effort into it because I'm sidetracked with so many other things. Well, what we've decided to do is try to narrow focus, put it into Pour Over, which is a live show from New Media Lab, get our socials correct, get our newsletter pumping. I've been doing it on Substack. I'm doing notes. I'm gaining some attention there. It's working. And if I were to put 2 hours a day into this, imagine what this could be. Well, one of the things she said right away, Maeve said to me, is she goes, we were talking about all this, and she said, okay, I've got a thought, and you may or may not like it. Spoiler, I love it. She said to me, I feel like you've gotten away from a couple of core things that you do or that we do that have been the things that worked the best. So what she pitched to me, she did a pitch, was we're going to do a side show to this. It's going to be Maeve and I. Now we're still formulating it. And we haven't named it yet, even though it's part of Pour Over. It's going to have its own name. It might even be Catalyst, because Catalyst, I don't know if you guys, if you're watchers of this show and you saw way back, we did an episode called Catalyst where we had people ask questions, and then we all kind of as a hive mind came up with answers. And what she said is, what if we did that? The two of us work together specifically on, it won't be live asking questions like we do here. This will be something that people write in with their marketing thing or business thing or whatever. They need ideas. Hell, they're doing a pitch for a campaign and they're like, here's what I'm going after and I'm lost. What can I do? And each episode, we're going to take one of these specific things. We're going to pick one each time. And the two of us are going to have a conversation about it and come up with ideas and do a little research possibly to make it stronger. So it's a little bit more thought out. It's not as stream of consciousness as this show. But it's going to be the two of us. Early on in our network, it was the two of us and then Molly. And those shows are some of my favorites. I love listening to those shows. No shade to anybody else or to the stuff I did later. I did a lot of fun stuff, but those early ones with my family are obviously for personal reasons my favorites. But I also think there was a certain energy that we bring to it. And then Maeve and I did a show called Broken to Brave. Her show was a podcast. And then she said, I said, we should do a Patreon show. And she said, okay, if we're going to do that, you're going to be on it. And we did a Patreon exclusive show for Broken to Brave for 4 years. It was only one season on the regular feed. 4 years we did it on the Patreon feed. And the reason she wanted me on was she said, look, we're talking about like her trauma and the brave things she's had to overcome and blah, 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 or embrace. And she said, I want to get the husband's perspective. So I was her co-pilot totally on that. And for my money, it's the best thing we ever created in our podcast network. No offense to all the podcasters who have done an amazing job and did great shows. This is the single thing that to me, I look at, I listen to, and I go, wow, this is what podcasting is. Or supposed to be. I love it. Absolutely love it. Well, she wants to go back to that. She wants to say, we're not going to talk about trauma and all that stuff. We're going to talk about this, something she and I can talk for hours about. We love this stuff. We've been to so many leadership conferences and seen so many speakers, and we talk about this stuff all the time. You know, she just doesn't want to be a marketer, but she's got a marketing brain. So we're going to be adding a second show to this. How I'm going to add it, I have not figured out yet. That is what I'm working on right now, is the strategy. Which social media I'm going to even put together, what that's going to look like, because it's not going to be random. It's going to be well thought out. How this fits in the mix, how it might be Catalyst fits in the mix, how the podcast for New Media Lab fits in the mix, and how the Substack fits in. It's all one thing. I'm not doing 154 shows. I'm doing a couple of other shows, and I'm doing this. And I'm excited. I can't wait to sit down with her and start recording and figuring this out. We just got to keep hammering it out. We're taking a trip next week, and I figure in the car we're going to have a good hour or so just talking about exactly this and what this looks like. Plus Molly will be in the car, and she's a basket of ideas as well. So who knows? She'll probably weasel her way into it. Every show will start with welcome to Pour Over, welcome to Catalyst. Like when she was a little kid, and she'd do what? Welcome to Ever After. You got to hear those Ever Afters. She's like 6 years old. Welcome to Cuckoo for Who. That was another show that she created that we did. She was the host on those, and that little 6-year-old voice is amazing. I doubt she'll do that now. Oh, if I could go back in time and make her do an announcement for all sorts of things. So there's the big announcement. We are adding a second show to this. Uh, since things are narrowing down, what I'm thinking is I'll keep pour over on Saturday morning. I'm actually working on another thing involving this Saturday morning show, which would be exciting if I pull the thing off, which I think I can pull it off. I just got to make sure I want to pull it off the way I'm formulating it. And then I think what I'm going to do is start doing uh, our happy hours, like maybe start once a month, do a happy hour where it's at night. We're drinking something other than coffee, although likely I'll be drinking coffee. And I got to figure out exactly what that show is. Uh, this is an AMA and a chat, fireside chat. That one, I think what I want to do is make it more structured. For happy hour, I know that seems weird. Happy hour you'd think would be unstructured, but I think what I want to do is have it be specific topics that we promote. This happy hour, we're going to be talking about, I don't know, Instagram. We're going to be talking about newsletters. We're talking about whatever. That way, this show can be loosey-goosey. That can be structured, but I don't know. The last couple I did were unstructured, and they were a lot of fun. So maybe it's just a nighttime version of this. I don't know. So, any thoughts on this? I'm not seeing any comments. I'm hoping people are commenting somewhere. Like I said, I never get any comments right now on my StreamYard. It's very, very strange. Let me look and see if somehow comments got. No, you can't turn off comments. No, they're here. It's very weird. Okay. So topic number 2. This one is for you podcasters out there. We're going to go specific to podcasting. But once again, anybody that watches my show knows when I go specific on something, it doesn't mean you can't apply it to what you do. Oh, Gordon wrote, I have a comment. Gordon, hey, Gordon, I love your ideas. If you ever want to brainstorm, hit me up. I haven't had enough coffee either, which is why I'm quiet. I get it, Gordon. And I know people are there. It's weird. I've kind of had a restructuring of my thoughts around this show, too. I used to look and see how many people were watching. It's after the fact that I'm getting all the watches. I just like the live thing because then you can ask questions and that. And yeah, sometime we will sit down and do some brainstorming, Gordon. I would love that. Maybe we'll do a. I just had an idea that might be kind of fun. I know you're in the city. You're in the city, right? You're in Chicago. You can just say yes or no. You don't have to give your address, Gordon. Oh, I think Gordon's off pouring coffee. Okay, when you can tell me if you're in the city. Well, what I'm thinking is maybe we'll do a pour over meetup where we meet. Yes, in Chicago. Great. Maybe we'll do something that's like closer to Chicago, and we'll do a pour over meetup that we can do like a brainstorming session with everybody and just kind of chat about marketing and have some coffee or drinks or whatever. And kind of do that catalyst thing, but do something live. I think that might be kind of fun. Let me work on that one. But I'd like to bring it more towards Chicago. When we did our podcaster meetups, we did one out in Elgin, and only one couple showed up. We had people that wanted them on the South Side. Nobody showed up. We did them in Chicago, and like one time we had like, I don't know, 20 people show up. It was awesome. I just got to find a space that's cool with this and a time. But yeah, I think that might be really cool to do some kind of live brainstorming session. Maybe I do a short little presentation about something first, or we get a speaker to come. Be cool. I like this idea. Okay. So here's what I wanted to talk about. And once again, I'm going to talk about it in podcast terms. But take these central ideas, put them into your funnel, and mix them around until they come out with the idea that works for you or that applies to you. So we've had our podcast network for, God, I'm lost now. It's 12 years, I think. We might even be on 13. I can't remember. And I think we're entering our 13th year, I think. And the big question from day one was, how do you make money at podcasting? And I get asked this question constantly. If you go back in our history, Maeve and I were guests on a podcast all about that. It was called Profitcast or something. No, Profit something. I was on Profitcast. I don't remember. It's on the Southgate Media Group on my bio page. I saved that one. Anyway, that whole show, the whole idea was, how do you make money at a podcast? And he was trying to figure it out, so that he said, by the time the show is done, I'm making money at a podcast. And then he gets us on, and first thing out of our mouths is, well, you don't. And we talked about how it's all the stuff around it. Everybody that goes on there was talking about getting sponsorship, getting ads. Every single one that went on talked about that stuff. We talked about everything but that. And in our 13 years, I've had virtually no success with ads. And I thought, you know what? I wanted to write on the Mic Drop Substack about sponsorship because people are getting it. I happen to use it a certain way. I actually like using the sponsors on our shows to push, and this is how you can make money at podcasting, push money towards you. So if you listen to some of our podcasts, like when I did that series for Books of Horror, there was an ad for my coaching. There was an ad for one of our shows. There were ads. Oh, hey, Bruce. Happy you're here. There were ads. The ads were things like, we're doing a live podcast marathon. That ad goes on there to push people towards our stuff. I think that's a really good business model when you're podcasting. You know, social media marketing. There's a podcast. Oh my God. It's not called Social Media Marketing World. I don't remember the name. That's their live event. But they have a social media podcast that's really good. And then they do this big conference every year called Social Media Marketing World. When I interviewed their one of their heads of marketing for this group, I talked to her about sponsorship and making money at podcasting. She said the same thing. They've had a very difficult time finding any type of sponsor, and they were a huge show. They said what they did was they decided to shift it. And they said, if you listen to our ads, every ad we have is us. It may be a different name, but it's all pushing back towards our thing. This is brought to you by Social Media Marketing World. Well, the name of the show isn't that. So it seemed like it was a different thing. Not that they're trying to trick you, but they're saying, you know, in your branding, you have your specific things. Like we have here, Pour Over Marketing, but then we're talking about having Catalyst. Catalyst is in the same umbrella, but it's not saying Pour Over Marketing's Catalyst. That's not what it's saying. And I could create promotion on my podcast, when I say podcast, it could also be your vlog, whatever, your Substack. Okay. So that was our idea. But then I kept thinking about it. I'm like, but people do get sponsors. And why have I never been able to crack this nut? I had a really great letter one time that was a letter of introduction that it was well crafted. It had all the elements that should have attracted sponsors. And I sent it out to a lot of places, and the few that responded, and that's when you do it, you will send out 1 million and get one back, said things like, oh, we don't have it in our budget. And I thought, okay, I'm missing the mark here. So I Googled it this week. I typed in how to get sponsors, not how to make money at a podcast, but how to get podcast sponsors. Up came an article. There were a few articles. I kind of ditched on a lot of them. They weren't really hitting me the way I wanted them to. But then this guy, Eric Montgomery, he's a podcast production agency owner. So he's kind of like me. I own it, but I executive produce. I wouldn't call it a production agency. That's when you take outside things and you keep producing other people's things. Uh, but it is, we would probably have quite a conversation. And I am going to invite him on. I'm hoping I can get him for a live thing on my Substack, or I'll do an interview with him and we'll share it. Anyway, he did this great article on LinkedIn, how to get podcast sponsors. Eric Montgomery. He also hosts a show called Clipped, and it's all about tips for making money with podcasting and podcasting tips. Anyway, in the article, first thing I want to say is he broke it down in a way that is businessy, which is good. Because your podcast, your vlog, your Substack, you should be treating these things as a business, just like any endeavor you're doing. You should be treating it like a business. Okay? So he treats this like a business. And he says, here are the requirements. There are 3 requirements for getting podcast sponsors. They're very logical: audience size, engagement level, and content quality. And I was like, okay, engagement level, it's tough. You got to work on that. I have my thing that I say, which is always have the last word. That's a way to build engagement. Putting up polls, asking questions. You watch the Space for New Media Lab, and you're going to start seeing a lot more stuff going in that builds engagement. When I do this show and I'm asking for people to comment, what am I doing? I'm trying to get engagement in here. Okay? Engagement is key. But then he says content quality. Well, okay, I've been watching this show, and I think I can up the content quality. I have an SLR camera here that I have not tested yet, but I'm going to test this. It looks like it does streaming. If it does streaming, I can get better video quality than what we have here. This is an HD camera, but I look back at it and it looks blurry. It doesn't look as crisp as it does when you're talking on camera for yourself. So I think I want to do what I can to up that. I've got ring lights. I've got some things like maybe we can up the quality. The content that I'm sharing, the ideas in that, I think are there. I feel good about them. Am I the best? No. Who is? Right? Do I have good ideas? Am I sharing a lot? Yes. Do I have engagement with you guys? Gordon, Bruce? Heck yeah. I do. Serena's usually here. She was going to be here today. She's not here. Like, there are a lot of people that are becoming kind of regulars. If they're not regulars here, they're regulars on the YouTube thing and they're writing to me. Okay. So engagement is going up and I'm going to build engagement. But then the third one, audience size. I'm like, this has been a thorn in my side forever. Way back, we had about 30 different titles, might have even been 40 at that point. And there's a company called Midroll that reached out to me. And Midroll is a company that puts ads on podcasts. So if you're listening to, I don't know, Someone Knows Something is a podcast, and they have an ad for Casper Mattress, and they have an ad for whatever Bones Coffee Company, and then it goes into the show. Those are dynamic ads that are placed by Midroll. Okay, so the host didn't go out and try to get those. Some of them they are, but I'm just giving an example. Sometimes there are these things where they just kind of place them in. And Midroll is a company that does this. And back then, they were the only company doing it. And they reached out to me and they said, wow, you've got a lot of shows. You're number one on iTunes in a couple of categories. Like, we want to talk to you. In the conversation, it flipped. They were all excited until they asked me what our download numbers were. And I said, well, you can't really measure that, but I can tell you roughly. There's a formula to figure it out, kind of. And our numbers were terrible. Like, I thought they were good. Like, our best show is doing, I don't know, 600 downloads an episode, something like that. And they said, oh, okay, well, get back to us when you hit 10,000 an episode. We've never come close to that. Even our biggest show, which was running at about 2,000 an episode, and that was a big show. We got a lot of attention. 10,000. So the audience size thing ever since then has been something I've rejected. But then I'm reading this article, and I realized in here, he says brands that are looking to sponsor do look for a minimum of 10,000 downloads per episode. This has become the norm, probably because of mid-roll or because of radio advertising people that said, here's the number. They do say it's a critical factor when you're going for that type of sponsor. It's not the only factor. I mentioned the other two. But here's the thing. You can also launch a show and have a sponsor. You don't need 10,000. What you have to do is you have to be able to have engagement, have the quality, and in that engagement, it demonstrates there is an audience here. Now, if you have an audience of 300 listeners, you're not going to go to Coke and get sponsorship. They want a bigger piece of the pie. But you could, maybe there's a local soft drink. You could probably go to them and say, look, for $10 an episode, I'll do a 30-second spot. You got to sign up for 3 months. Okay. I do X amount of episodes per month, $10 an episode. You sign a 3-month contract. Boom. You just made a couple $100 off your show. You're not in the $10,000 club or 10,000 download club. And even at that, like, that's a weird thing, but okay. Then when I was reading this article, I clicked on the thing that said audience size. And it went to, well, first of all, audience size went to his podcast Clipped. And I ended up really liking it. Okay. So I do suggest finding this article. You know what? I'm going to put it right in here, right in the comments. How dare you? Pie is delicious, Bruce. Okay. So there's the article. But then in there, and I don't know which one I clicked on. It wasn't audience size. It was one of the things in here I clicked on, and it took me to this. And I'm going to share this too. This was fascinating. It's a site called Influencer Marketing Hub. There's so much interesting information in here, but this page that I just shared, a full guide to podcast sponsorship and ad rates for 2024. Okay, it talks about the different types of ads, talks about, all this stuff. Now, here's a great one. It has a thing in here called the Podcast Revenue Calculator. Now, I told you, we had shows that were doing 2,000. I'm going to put the calculator at 2,000. In fact, let's do this. We're going to end early today, by the way, guys. Let's see, share screen. Boom. Okay, here's the calculator. So let's put it in. Let's say you have a podcast that has 2,000 downloads per episode. With that, I'm going to put 4 ads per episode, 2 at the front, 2 at the mid. How many monthly episodes aired with that show? I'm going to say 4, but it was actually a lot more. But 4 was once a week for the main show. That was the one that was pulling in the 2,000. So we do that. Earnings per episode, 110 to 165 for one that size. Earnings per month, 400 to 600. This adds up. You stay consistent. Look at that. The end of the year, you could be doing $5,000 to almost $8,000 just off of that. So you put the effort in, you grow that audience, you get up to 2,000. Look where you could be. Now, is that a definite, like, yeah, I'm going to hit that? No, but it gives you something to work toward. Now, let's take, with one, you're not making much. But this show, I could get this up to 394 downloads per episode. I'd put 4 ads on here. Look at that. Made $1,600 a year with 4 ads. Doing this once a week. Is that going to add up? Sure. Is it going to motivate me to get this number higher? You bet. I look at some of the business podcasts out there. In fact, I've interviewed a few that do really well. And a number like right in here is not unreasonable for a business podcast, for an average one, not even your top tier. Well, that's almost $3,000 a month with just 4 ads. Boy, if I had that, I'd probably bump it up to 5, 2 at the front, 3 in the middle. Now we're talking. You're talking $40,000 a year off of that show. Now you're talking. Once again, are these definite? No. No. You have to work to get there. But I now have how much to it actually talks in here about how much you should be charging for the different things. What a 90-second one adds, what a product placement ad should cost. If you had a paid interview, which I would not do, what are the ad rates? Here's the thing. What are the average podcast ad rates? $18 for a 30-second ad. When I talk to podcasters and I ask, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to charge $100. You're going to get $100 an episode." So now you're telling your sponsor they have to spend $400. You better have one hell of a big audience for that. But do you think you could get $18? Well, maybe you have to be up in that higher 10,000 range. But if I have 300 downloads per episode, maybe I can get $10 an ad. And I do four a month. Okay, so that's every episode is making me $40 times 4. So $160 for just doing this. And if you go, well, that's not very much. It's more than zero. And it also tells you where you can grow it. There are a lot of things to take in. Ad length, size of your audience, who your demographics are, the timing. You know, those are the things that you have to take into account. But in the beginning, just try to get there. Just try to get to that number. Oh, this is good too. I'll share this. And then we're going to call it a day. So these are what some of these podcasts do. Bigger Pockets, one of the top real estate podcasts in the United States. Now, that's just who only realtors are listening to this. You're talking a niche, right? They charge $5,000 per podcast ad campaign. Tech Guys, $25,000 for a broadcast quarter. These are people that have grown their audiences, right? But look down here. B2B Growth Show, one of the leading podcasts for marketing in the U.S., charges anything from $150 to $600 for ads. Do you have to be a leader? You know, being a leader doesn't take that many. It doesn't take that many listens. You just got to keep working, keep growing it. Okay. We're going to end early today. Thank you guys for watching. Next week, Pour Over Marketing on the road. Road trip with Pour Over Marketing. I'm still working these out. I'll get it. I'll have a logo for it too. Thanks for listening, you guys. And Gordon and I will be thinking about some kind of live event. Hold on. Yeah, Bruce. Bruce says I could live on that. But yeah. But what am I going to do for the rest of the day? I'm sorry, Bruce. Go back and watch old episodes of this. Go listen to my 10,000 hours of podcasts. You could do that. Go listen to This Week in Geek. That's what you should do. Then you can hear me being a complete jackass, which is your favorite version. If you bought an action figure of me, you'd buy the jackass version. I know it. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week, broadcasting live from Omaha, Nebraska.